So for all the mechanisation of warfare, which you've talked about, the industrialisation of warfare, still the image we have of the First World War is the soldier in the trench, the poor bloody infantry, yet again stuck as the image and as the main victim, I suppose, if you want to look at it in that point of view of the war.
That's absolutely the case. We have over 70 million men who are mobilised, over 10 million military dead. Probably 65% of the soldiers are killed by artillery fire, and these are the men who bear the brunt of it. It's a tragedy. In that sense, I think profoundly a tragedy, and these are the men who bear the brunt of the tragedy. At the same time, I think there is a slight danger in sentimentally victimizing them in retrospect. For a start, even when they were conscripts, these were often men who were willingly fighting that war, who, out of a sense of duty, obligation, loyalty to comrades, in some cases hatred of the enemy. Soldiers killed as well as being killed, and it wasn't just the artillery who killed, the infantry also killed, and men knew that they had done that, and often that was a difficult thing for them to come to terms with afterwards. Also, because it was an industrial war, the soldiers often talked as if they were doing a kind of work. I mean, they were. Instead of being upright and conquering and moving forward, often they were digging. It was heavy labor, the First World War. They were digging, they were pouring concrete, laying barbed wire. The work of manual laborers in industrial societies at the beginning of the 20th century. They became very proficient at a lot of this. I think it perhaps helps to think of it in this way, that in the practice of daily siege warfare, they became very proficient at protecting themselves, at stabilizing the lines, at fighting this kind of war. They had all sorts of opportunity within that, because there were long periods of leisure, sitting around at the rear in sectors where nothing much was going on, in which they could sing, write. They wrote massively, talked. There was a whole social life at the front. I mean, if you think of the siege of Troy, which lasted 10 years, we know that a lot of the time the Greeks spent lying around in their tents, talking and so on. And that's kind of true of the siege warfare of the First World War, punctuated by these terrible attempts to break the enemy lines, these offensives in which suddenly the losses went up, the wounds were appalling. And so constantly haunted, therefore, this experience by the potential imminence of your own death. And that trauma hanging over Europe in the interwar years, I think, helps explain a great deal about feelings of pacifism, about a sense of irony, a sense of a world that was disenchanted because of that experience. And yet, at the same time, the losses had been so great, the cost had been so high. The question was, how did you make all of that justified in retrospect? And that was as much an argument for new utopias, for fascism, for communism, for pacifism, as it was for disenchantment.